Saving the first $1,000 often feels strangely difficult, almost disproportionately hard compared to saving much larger amounts later. Many people describe it as the point where money management stops feeling theoretical and begins to collide with the realities of everyday life. Before that first milestone, money tends to behave like a constant flow. Income arrives, expenses appear, and the cycle repeats with little sense of accumulation. But the moment someone attempts to deliberately separate a portion of that flow and turn it into stored value, the system of daily spending begins to resist. At first glance, the difficulty appears purely numerical. If someone earns a modest income and manages basic living costs, setting aside $1,000 requires discipline and time. Yet, the math alone does not fully explain why this first threshold feels so heavy. The real explanation lies partly in financial structure and partly in psychology. In the early stage of someone's financial life, almost every dollar already has a job. Rent, food, transportation, communication, and unexpected expenses quietly absorb most available resources. When every incoming dollar is already committed to something necessary, creating the first small reserve requires disrupting that system. This disruption produces friction. Cutting a small expense can feel noticeable when margins are thin. A minor inconvenience, skipping a convenience purchase, delaying a small upgrade, adjusting habits, suddenly becomes visible because the financial system is operating near its limit. In that environment, saving money does not simply mean storing value, it means redesigning how daily life operates. The first $1,000, therefore, represents a structural shift rather than a simple numerical goal. Behavioral economics helps explain another layer of this difficulty. Human decision-making often prioritizes immediate stability over distant security. When people operate without savings, the mind naturally focuses on maintaining short-term balance. Bills must be paid this week, groceries must be purchased today, and transportation must function tomorrow. The psychological horizon becomes narrow. Attempting to save money introduces a future-oriented decision into a system that is optimized for the present moment, which makes the act feel uncomfortable, even when the math is reasonable. There is also a mathematical component related to financial momentum. When savings equals zero, every dollar saved must come directly from reduced spending or increased income. There is no existing capital contributing to the process. Once someone has accumulated a small reserve, however, the dynamics begin to change subtly. Money starts behaving differently. A financial buffer reduces the frequency of emergency spending, which stabilizes the monthly budget. Small interest earnings, while modest, begin to reinforce the sense that stored money can slowly support itself. Over time, this creates a psychological shift. Instead of feeling like someone who is constantly reacting to expenses, a person begins to experience money as something that can be directed. The $1,000 mark often represents the first visible proof that income can be converted into stored value. That proof changes behavior. People who have crossed that threshold tend to view saving not as deprivation, but as a form of control over future uncertainty. Historically, financial researchers have observed similar patterns across different income levels and economic environments. The earliest stage of capital formation almost always carries the highest friction because it requires creating stability before growth becomes possible. Large investments, retirement accounts, and long-term financial strategies all depend on this early stage of accumulation, even though it receives far less attention than the later milestones. In this sense, the first $1,000 is not merely a small savings target. It functions more like a turning point in how money operates within a person's life. Before that point, financial decisions are mostly reactive. After it, money slowly begins to form a buffer between everyday uncertainty and long-term planning. The difficulty of reaching that first milestone therefore reflects something deeper than arithmetic. It reflects the transition from a system where money only passes through your hands to one where a portion of it begins to stay.